Good morning. I'm Attorney James W. Davis, and this is Politically Incorrupt. We take a look at hot political issues, and we analyze them from a common sense, honest, and fair balanced perspective. Today we're going to be looking at immigration. We're going to have with us Moses Velez from KPASA newspaper to tell us the immigrant perspective on what this immigration bill that's been signed into law on May 13th by our governor, Nathan Deal, and tell us how he believes it will affect the immigrants that are in this population, how they came here, and why they're here. We're also going to be talking with Mark Cloutier, and he's going to be letting us know the Tea Party movement. He's heading up, a part of what's heading up the new Tea Party movement. He's going to let us know from a Tea Party perspective what they anticipate with the new bill and what they believe about its face. We're also going to look at immigration as a whole and determine why people are immigrating to this country, what's happening in this country, and why it's become such a hot topic issue that it has, the racial implications and the other implications on jobs, unemployment, and that type of thing. I work in immigration, we work in criminal law, we work with other types of legal thing in bankruptcy and real estate. If you need an attorney in that area, think of us. For now, we're going to talk to Moses about immigration and how it's affecting his people.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Mark, for being here. Well, like you said, immigration is a hot topic. It's something that makes us talk about what's going on in our country, especially in our society here in the Central Georgia area. For those who don't know me, let's talk about a little bit about newspaper and who I am. I've been here for 25 years. I think about myself as a person from Macon. I always been involved in the community in different issues. I was part of the Cherry Blossom Board of Directors and also put together once a year with the Georgia State Fair a Latino Day for people to come understand what the Hispanic community is all about. And we also keep a newspaper who comes once a month. And we had 12,000 copies. And this paper goes all the way to Valdosta. I mean, it's a regional newspaper more than local only paper. And our new governor signed into law HB 87 recently, and is going to be taken to court this week by some groups that we think that the law has some flaws on it. I mean, we need to keep looking at this issue further.
Okay. And Mark, tell us a little bit about the Tea Party movement and how you guys are starting here in Macon. What you guys?
Well, James, I'd like to thank you for inviting me, first and foremost. I'm a member of the Macon-Bibb County Tea Party, and we recently got together, and I got the interest in the Tea Party when it came out before the 2010 elections. And it just intrigued me, and I started reading and trying to understand what is it that has got so many people involved in these topics, and how does it impact us. I went back and read the Declaration of Independence, and even in there, of the 27 grievances that were stated as to why we declared independence from Britain, one of them was immigration. This country has always been built on immigration, and one of the reasons that they stopped was the king basically said no more immigration, and he controlled the immigration to this country. And then I read our Constitution. It says limited government. It gave our government limited powers. It was designed so that we could be free people, do what we need, driven by free market enterprises and endeavors. And really, I see that's what has driven America. And I think some of the things when we start talking about immigration that draws so many people to this country, and I know, James, we're going to get into this, talk about it later, is there's a lot of things behind it as to why we don't bring in all the immigrants that want to come to America. But as far as the Tea Party goes, we're here to talk about what is going on in Macon, how our government is impacting our lives, and ultimately, we're really looking forward to understanding this topic better and making all people in this community understand the Tea Party is about our Constitution. It is about limited government, and that we are a country of immigrants, and therefore we look at that and say, we're not against it, but we have to follow the laws written by a sovereign nation, the United States.
All right, thank you, Mark. This program is brought to you by my office, Law Office of J. Davis and Associates, as well as Think Inc. And Think Inc. is a new organization. It's a nonprofit. It's designed for theological, historical insights, inspiring new knowledge. What we try to do is we utilize the past history of the laws in the United States and let them help us understand why we've got the laws as they are, why the immigration is, why bankruptcy is, why all the different laws, how they come to be in our existence. a lot of people take political sides rather than trying to analyze what the actual things are. Think Inc. is designed to kind of curb that partisan side and kind of think out as a group what ways we might can fix different problems such as immigration and other hot topic, particularly hot topic issues are the ones that we like to take on. Think Inc., if anybody becomes interested in being a part of that or donating to that, it is nonprofit. It's not yet tax exempt, but you can make those, you can contact those through my office at 143 Lamar Street in Macon, Georgia, 31204. That's Think Inc., 143 Lamar Street, Macon, Georgia, 31204. Let's look at the law for just a minute, though. One thing I'd like to say as we start is I'm going to talk a little bit about the law itself as it exists. And the problem with what I believe is the problem in with our law today with immigration is the federal government has failed to act. Our Constitution, the Supreme Court has interpreted the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8 it was, where the Constitution gave Congress the full authority for naturalization. Now, naturalization doesn't really necessarily mean anybody who comes in and out, but the Supreme Court has determined that that's what it's going to mean, that Congress has full authority over that. And that limits what the states can actually do. And that's why there's so much controversy in Arizona and soon to be in Georgia and other states around the nation, because the federal government has failed to do anything virtually, and the states are trying to find some way to salvage sort of what I believe is the mess that the federal government is creating. So as far as that, I'd like to go to each of you and kind of get your perspective on what's going on with the law. I know there's some issues in the Georgia law itself. One of the issues are employers are going to be held more accountable for how they're hiring. They're going to have to go through a database and try to make sure their employees are approved through the database through the immigration with an immigration check and that type of thing. Other things are the things that are more serious to the individuals themselves, and that is being stopped by a police officer and being able to be looked at and determined that you can be taken in because of perceived immigration status without necessarily any proof. But if you don't have proof to the contrary, they may assume somebody to be here in an illegal fashion. Moses, let's start with you. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your people, how the people you believe you represent may be affected by the law, how that goes on?
Yes, I'll be glad. First of all, the law is divided in three dates. July the 1st is the first part of the law, who is the one who started that a policeman can stop somebody who he thinks have a criminal behavior and ask for his papers. That's the first part. That also includes that is a lot of churches are not going to be able to transport the people to churches anymore, because if you are driving a person who is undocumented, you can be arrested also. That's
one of the things that I noticed in the law itself, that can create a lot of liability to somebody who otherwise thinks that they're safe. Somebody who has a friend or a neighbor and they want to drive them somewhere, and the law sort of gives a little bit of an out. It says if they're going for something that has to do with their illegal status or supporting them, but there's a lot of room that there could be criminal charges, misdemeanors beginning, but up to felonies.
What you imagine is a lot of couples who one is legal and the other is not. I mean, the wife and the husband cannot be together anymore in the car.
Right.
That's
right.
going to be right there. We're separating.
That's true.
Families. Then the second part study, I think, is in December. Who is if you employ more than 10 people, you have to verify the papers. And then in January is the third part, who is something close to that. I can't remember exactly, but it's in three parts. And the first part, who starts in July the 1st, is the one who's going to affect more directly people. And in Arizona and Iowa, the court has said that is unconstitutional because tend to be racial profiling. You know, how you know who is who just by the color, or how you, and what is criminal behavior, you know, as something who is too broad from my point of view to talk.
And one thing that we spoke about earlier is the agricultural aspect of it. There are some problems with the bill itself, and that there's no concept for what we're doing with the agriculture issues. And they look at the Department of Agriculture to make a study to find out what they're going to do to control our agriculture to keep from this bill from creating havoc and having problems with everybody on what we do with agriculture. You want to go ahead and tell Mark your sort of how you think this affects people that you feel are represented more by your organization?
Well, I think the Tea Party looks at our country as a country of laws. It's written under our Constitution. They're looked at, they're studied that way, they're litigated in that fashion. And when you look at our Constitution and when you look at what we're talking about with immigration, it's a law. And there comes the big part of when you start discussing, when we think about it, is illegal immigration. It means you're here in violation of our law. And that is a portion of where I think some of the debate comes in. And if you break a law, i.e., as Moses was talking about, that if you are pulled over for a traffic violation, as any of us can be, we have to, typically a police officer will ask you for your ID. Well, that's not profiling. That's looking for identification to know who you are, to tie it back into the property, or, are you registered to drive? I mean, it's something as simple as that, that's the laws we all live under. We have to have the documentation. We have to be able to prove that documentation to any law officer because, again, we are a nation of laws.
But if someone was walking on the street and were stopped by a police officer, they wouldn't have to, a U.S. citizen wouldn't have to normally provide any sort of ID if there wasn't something that generated some sort of issue. Whereas this law seems to give a lot of broad range to somebody that may be suspected or detained for some other reason, being near or around some event that happened, and having to prove not only who they are, but what their immigration status is. And if a U.S. citizen, for example, didn't have an ID, or I have clients regularly who have an ID that's taken by the court, they don't have it on their person. So there's still potential that those people, without any sort of proof, a U.S. citizen may not have to do that. The only way it seems to be, it would have to almost be a racial profile to determine that that person was here illegally, or a speech
Right. Well, I think what we have to do is sometimes we put the cart before the horse, in that everybody calls it out as profiling. And I don't think the police officers in this country are designed to profile. They're there to protect us under the laws that are written. So I think we shouldn't, before a law is ever enacted, start to make accusations that it's going to work or it's not going to work. And those type of accusations, when you talk about hot topics, Moses knows it, James, you know it. That's what makes these things hot topics. You're accusing somebody of profiling. In our country, we're innocent before proven guilty, if we are ever proven guilty. That's our premise. Mm-hmm. So we should never go down these laws and put it out to our communities that that's the way it is.
Okay.
Well, let me say something about this.
Okay.
What happens is we see again and again and again, I'm going to be blunt here, Houston County, where the sheriff go and put a road blockade where he knows it's Latinos living. He knows that that's where they go. And inclusive, he do have 3 or 4 agents whose only job is to look for Latinos. And I challenge him to prove me wrong. He is doing it, and he's doing it in a way that every day he said in a newspaper he wants to deport 25 people every week. That's his goal. And that's for me racial profiling. Okay.
Well, I think if they're trying to do racial profiling because they're Latinos, I think it's definitely a racial profile. But if they're trying to deport because they're illegal, I think it may not be.
Okay.
Again, this is brought to you by our office, James W. Davis. We also do real estate at the office. And if you're buying or selling a home or refinancing, it is the buyer's choice or the refinancer's choice on who does the closing. We'd like for you to ask for our office. If you're a seller, contract with the buyer that's doing it. Most people don't care. We'd ask you, if you like the program, support us, give us a call at the office to handle your closing. Let's move on to the next thing, at the different causes of immigration. I think I'll go to you for this on Moses. What makes somebody in Guadalajara or Mexico City or some city over in Mexico, or I know there's a lot of issues like Guatemala, other countries that actually have some political unrest that drives them out, and that's becoming to be the thing in Mexico as well. But what makes somebody sitting there decide to come over to the United States?
Well, it's different issues. It's the political climate for one, also the criminal issues. But the most important is people want a better life for their family, for themselves, to support the families over there. And for example, again and again, when we interview people who have been here, who have been legalized or something like that, the first thing they tell you, we came here because the American dream. We want to have the opportunity to grow in this country, to study, to better ourselves and our families. And one thing we have done in our paper is every month we feature somebody who is in this country and has been successful. And the last 2 times has been one from this channel, Channel 41, and the other one from Channel 24. And both persons said our family came one from Cuba because persecution. And how they make it here and how they look for this country to be a better place. Now, in the other hand, and this is interesting because I'm from Puerto Rico, and all the Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, even we don't speak English in the island. We had the same issue in the island with Dominican Republic. People cross from the Dominican Republic to Puerto Rico, and U.S. immigration over there are trying to deport them because of the same. It's just the need for money and the American dream. And I think that has been the driving force. Always we have Irish, we have people from different countries, I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I've traveled around to a lot of Spanish-speaking countries, learning to speak Spanish and doing other things like that. And I know I meet people who want to come to the United States. Everybody knows about the United States. The issue I have sort of is not so much with the people who want to come as with the government who doesn't seem to do anything to make that different. They don't do, if they're going to have, like Mark says, I fully agree. If we're going to have laws, let's go by the laws. But we also have businesses, large businesses, that make a lot of money, and individuals for that matter, for somebody doing brickwork or doing something, they enjoy getting the benefit of the labor without allowing them to assimilate into the society. And that's sort of where I think, not necessarily that the law is wrong, but the enforcement of it is wrong. The other thing is that takes us into the way the effect that it has on U.S. workers. We're in a high unemployment time at this time. 2 years ago, we may not have been in the same situation 3 years ago, but now it's in a high unemployment. We've got people who are here undocumented without supposedly the right to work, but are working. So tell us a little bit about how you think that affects the U.S. citizen worker.
Well, I think I like what Moses points out. This is the land of opportunity. You can come here in many immigrations. I'm a third generation immigrant from Canada. My grandfather came here, worked in the mills. I've had the opportunity because of the American dream to build myself up and get to where I am today. So when we look at why the unemployment, what we call unemployment, is some of it is not so much immigration is causing unemployment. It's the lack of willingness of people to get up and work. Nobody wants to be a plumber anymore. Nobody wants to be a carpenter anymore. They all want to be on the computer. They all want to be in air conditioning. Well, America was not built in air conditioning. It was never built off of, expensive labor. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't get paid what he gets paid by working by the hour. So there's a need for people who are willing to get out there. I've heard a lot of the issues here about not having enough people to pick the peaches in Georgia. Why? Well, if we let the free market work, and this is the way the Tea Party is looking at this, the free market will work, and it will come to a point where if the farmer needs it, he needs to raise his rates he's willing to pay to pull people in. And we as a society need to work on getting our children more interested in doing something other than it cannot always be going to college. Because you think if we all end up at college, who is going to be out there working in the fields? And there are people who enjoy working in the fields. So I think our unemployment issue is, one, Americans not getting out there and willing to take on manual labor. Everybody wants the government to do it. They want to hire somebody at an exorbitant rate. But you need the agriculture community that needs people at a reasonable rate, because this is the free market. The cost of the product coming out of the field, getting marked up by the middle person, and then moved over to the consumer, is where the money is made in America. It's a whole system of distribution, and we actually use labor as a commodity. It's part of what we do when we run businesses. And I came out of the chemical industry, where we were making a lot of chemicals, doing a lot of things. We had a lot of labor. We used a lot of people. So, but because of the cost of those commodities out on the market to make our clothes and paint our cars, we gleaned a very high value. But America doesn't want to pay $5 for an apple. So they're basically looking out for people who will go pick it for less than $5 an apple.
Well, I think that may be a part for a different different show as well. But I do think aside from immigration issues, we've got a lot of problems with what the government is doing in other areas, which I think discourages the behavior we would like to represent. People who don't want to work seem to get paid for it. People who do want to work a lot of times get penalized. And this, what's going on in the country has also led to a lot of bankruptcies, which is another area. But we do, at our office, we do the criminal, like we said, and I believe that a lot of Hispanics who have immigration issues need to be well protected in criminal laws. A lot of times they don't get a just system in there. But other people who may be a DUI and those type of things, our office is available to those. We also do the bankruptcy and, as I spoke earlier, on the real estate. But one of the things that I think is a potential solution, I mean, right now we've got a problem that it could be argued that the state's doing something is starting to make some sort of change. It's making it a lot harder on the immigrant community. It's probably having effect of some people at least running out of those states. Whether or not they're running out of the United States, we don't know, but I'm sure that it is having some effect on people coming out. It's also costing those states who are doing it money, because it's having effect on tourism, it's having effect on different businesses and whether or not a business is going to be there. But one of the solutions that I've proposed is one that was a few years ago almost passing Congress when we had a Republican president that was wanted to do something in immigration reform, and a Democratic Congress that would have thought was wanting it. They chose not to do it, but it was work visa. And in my opinion, the work visa will allow somebody to know where the undocumented are. Just like in the agriculture, we have the work visas that are issued for agriculture. There's not one generally issued for labor, but businesses could solicit the work visa for their employee. And if they were allowed to do that, then the U.S. government could withdraw those visas, and it would stop the immigrant worker being a cheaper labor source generally, because they'd be obligated to pay them the same rate. It would stop, from an immigration standpoint, it would give them the right to work at a reasonable rate. It would also allow them to be documented, have a driver's license. If somebody's attracted over here to the businesses, and I believe that they are attracted by the businesses over here, and if they're attracted here, and we're not going to do anything to the businesses, but we're going to penalize this society of people who are having to live at a lower standard because they have to hide, they can't drive, they can't do the other things that are allowed, I think we create a disproportionate balance. And I believe it's both sides. I don't believe it's one side more corrupt in this than the other. I believe you've got a liberal side that says let's just do everything and kind of legalize them, and a more conservative side, not the Tea Party necessarily of anything that I've seen, but definitely in the Republican Party, where there seems to be a lot of business, and they protect the business by not letting them get changed.
Well, Jay, can I ask you something?
Sure.
There's something here too that when we talk about the immigrant workers, are they the migrant workers or the immigrants? A migrant will come here and work our fields and then go back.
We're talking about immigrant workers.
Immigrants,
right
okay.
now.
These are people that want to become naturalized citizens.
We're talking about people who have come over here with anticipating to stay over here.
Okay, to become an American.
Yeah, not necessarily to become an American, but immigration to be in this country and to stay. The idea would be, we would assume a large majority of them would like to become American, would like to become U.S. citizens. But we're just talking about as a permanent resident, somebody married to a U.S. citizen who may not want to renounce their personal country, but may want to be here in a permanent way because of their spouse or their family and that type of thing.
Okay.
All right, and how much time we got?
All right, guys, here we go. 3, 2.
As we said earlier, the new Georgia law requires the Department of Agriculture of Georgia, the State Department of Agriculture, to do some investigation on a work visa for the agricultural workers. We're also talking about the work visa as a potential visa to go to other employees of different companies in order to find a way of documenting these people, finding out where they are, and then, if needed, rescind those visas in order to have them leave in a steady, orderly fashion. And I'd like to know from both parties, what do you guys think about that? What do you think about Moses?
Well, as you know, Iowa already have a program very close to what Georgia is looking at. They said if you are here, you're illegal, but you have been here and you behave good, you can have a job here in the agriculture business, okay? I mean, Iowa already is doing something that maybe we need to look at. But I want to point you something out too. Recently we finished the census of the United States, and Georgia won one seat. Now that the Latinos have been counted, now we're going to tell them, go home. We don't need you. We want a seat because you're here. And look the way we paint them. That's my thought.
Okay, that's a good point. That could be, it could be by design. It could be.
Well, we're talking about the Constitution. The Constitution says everybody needs to be counted, and if everybody's counted, they need to be counted not only in numbers, but also, give something back to them because you gain a seat. And I guarantee you, if you take out the Latinos out of the question, I don't think you will have that seat here in Georgia.
Well, I think, Moses, the one thing you got to remember about that is only American citizens are allowed to vote. So if the illegals are swaying the vote, then we have an issue with the voting, the way we vote in this state. So I agree that there's a lot of people here, and if they counted them in the census, because in the census, I'm pretty sure they didn't ask them for their voters' registration, and that added head count to it. But
right.
when we come down to voting, I think that's you're on a valid point. Now, as far as the Tea Party,
what I think he's saying is the census is based on numbers, not necessarily voters, but numbers of people in the state.
Exactly.
And so, based on the numbers of people in the state, Georgia's apportioned certain numbers and certain seats and everything based on that census. But I'd like to get, before we move on too much, what is your take from a Hispanic, from the population of undocumented?
The problem with that, the problem we're having right now is with this law that they just passed, people are trying to leave the state, and very soon we're going to feel the impact of this.
Right.
But I think we all in this table, we agree in some kind of working visa. I think in that we are all agree.
And would you agree with that also, Mark?
Yeah, I think the work visa is a very good thing. It brings people in. We get them, like you said, you know who they are, you know what they're doing, and an employer can be cross-referenced to that, and they can work with them. I think that's a great idea. Just needs to get smoothed out.
Yeah, so work out the wrinkles, and then we can kind of go from there. Well, it looks like we can come to some sort of consensus on what needs to be done with the immigration problem here. I believe it could be solved with a guest worker visa. I believe it could be solved for all the reasons what we just discussed. I think it's a good thing. To me, most hot topic political issues, and the reason we're kind of developing this program is because I believe most hot topic issues, when you sit down and analyze what you're trying to achieve, if people are reasonable about it, I think we come to a mutual understanding. A guest worker visa, I don't believe people should be having to hide where they are when they've been attracted here and been allowed to be here from the federal government. And in the Spanish, I did a lot of going to different communities, and I went to flea markets and that type of thing, and I saw things going on by the government that I believe were wrong. That being said, thank you guys for coming today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mark,
Moses,
nice.
great meeting you.